Good morning. This is Dave Rosenbaum with the Bureau of Business Research. Welcome to our webinar this morning. So we're going to talk about energy efficiency in public buildings, but it's more a demonstration of some of the capabilities of the Bureau of Business Research. So let me get you started here. We were contacted by what's now called the Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy, and they wanted, can we build a tool to estimate the impact of energy efficiency investments on public buildings? Well, we'd never done anything like that before, but we thought, sure, we'll give it a try. So we developed this Excel tool, and we developed it in Excel to make it easy to use. Lots of people know how to use Excel. Everybody has that software, so we thought that's going to be the easiest way to make this accessible to people. And the tool starts with building characteristics and the expenditures by type of improvement. And it estimates three things: the energy savings, the economic impact, and the environmental impact. So in describing the tool, let's first focus on the inputs that are required into this model or tool. And they really fall into two categories. One are the building characteristics, and the other are the investments in the type of energy improvements that you want to make. For example, doors and windows, new heating system, a new cooling system, improvements in the ventilation, things like that. And the building characteristics that we need to measure depend on the type of building that we're looking at. And it falls into, you can see here, 5 categories. The first one would be for offices, courthouses, financial small bank. Next one would be medical or surgical hospitals, schools, medical offices, dormitories. And this is, each of those categories requires different information. So for the office, courthouse, financial office, small bank category, you need to know things like square footage, weekly hours of operation, workers, number of personal computers, the percent that's cooled, whether it's a small bank or not. And then we can use, this is from the US Department of Energy. They have this portfolio manager, and the portfolio manager gives us information about, for each type of building, how they can estimate its expected energy usage before you make any kind of improvement. This is a little hard to read, but this is the data that each of those Energy Star reports provides. And so for those of you who are familiar with it, it's basically a regression analysis. And these are the control variables. And here are the coefficients that show energy usage based on each one of these variables. And we can use this Energy Star information to get an expected amount of energy use in a building before you make any kind of improvement. And the investments that we looked at were air conditioning, doors and windows, furnaces, heat pumps, HVAC systems, hot water heating, insulation, and lighting. Now let's talk about the output that gets generated by the model. First, energy savings. And that's measured 3 ways: in thousands of BTUs saved, and then we measure that savings relative to the initial energy usage, and that gives you relative energy savings. And then based on the price of energy, we can also estimate the annual dollar saved. The second thing we measure is economic impact. and there's an economic impact from the investments themselves. So for example, if you're putting in a new air conditioning system, somebody's got to come out and install it. That has an economic impact. It affects labor income, and it affects job years. In other words, a small job, you may have someone come out for a week. That's 1 week of a job. That would be 1/52nd of a job year. We also measure the environmental impact. So based on how energy is created in Nebraska, some of it coal-fired, there are going to be environmental implications from reducing the amount of coal that you have to burn because you're reducing the amount of energy that you have to use. So we can look at reduction in various emissions, and we can also translate those into dollar benefits based on the health and environmental impacts that are studied. There's a lot of national studies on that, and we just draw from those. So here's our question for the day. Do you need some kind of a economic environmental impact tool? And the answers are fairly obvious. Yes, no, or think about it. And if you have an idea, give us a call. Okay, let's jump into Excel and we can look at this tool. Let me come down here and bring up my Excel sheet. There's actually lots of worksheets in this workbook, but we've hidden all of the ones that do the calculations, and we're just showing you the ones that matter. The first one is the input page, and I've highlighted this first row because we'll focus on this particular project. So you can see we have a building identifier, and we just made up this data. I have no idea if it's really relevant or not, but we just made it up as a test for today. The date that you entered it, the county, congressional district, legislative district. We put these in here so if you want to track projects by district or by county, it can be done. Now for each of the building types, you have to put in the inputs. So our first building is an office, 10,000 square feet, 80 hours of weekly operation, 40 workers on the main shift, 40 personal computers, 80% of it is cooled. It's not a small bank. And you can see that we have other projects here that we've entered data for as well. So here's a medical or surgical hospital, a school, a medical office, a dormitory. Now based on the inputs, so if we slide back here again, here's what our example project looks like. And using that Energy Star data, here's what we think its energy usage will be. It will use 194.6 thousand BTUs per square foot. Okay, so that's our starting point. The next input we need to have are the investments. So in this project, we're going to spend $4,000 on air conditioning, $2,000 on doors and windows, $5,000 on furnace, and $750 on HVAC. And if we come over to the end, there's our total investment, $11,750. Okay, what's the energy impact from making these dollar investments? We can jump to the next worksheet. These are the energy savings in thousands of BTUs related to each investment we made. So we're going to save about 1,200 BTUs from air conditioning, about 2,600 from our door and window investment, 18,000 from the furnace investment, and 11,000 from the HVAC. So our total energy saving is 3.32 thousand BTUs per square feet, or about $471. that's a reduction in energy use of about 2%. Then we can look at the economic and environmental impact. So here's our example project again. And the economic impact is going to be about $12,000. It's going to generate about $5,700 in labor income and generate about 1.15 years. Here are the environmental emission reductions, and we categorize them into different types of emissions. And here's the present discounted value of that environmental benefit. So that would be, if we can reduce emissions this much, we're going to reduce the chance that someone gets sick or dies by a certain percentage, and that's how we value that reduction in that risk. And then finally, we can summarize all the data. So again, here's our example project. Here are the energy impacts. Its initial usage, its reduction, the percent savings, the dollar saved. Here's the economic impact on output, value added, labor income, and jobs. Here's the emission reduction and the present discounted value of that emission reduction. And that's the tool that we've created. It's still being developed in that we're always searching for better ways to convert these input investments into dollar savings in energy by type of building. We're not there yet, but we've made a good start on it. I can show you, let me see. Well, I can't seem to bring them up right now, but I was going to show you some of the other worksheets here that go into this. It's actually a fairly complicated calculation. So this is what we've developed for the Department of Environment and Energy. Jumping back into PowerPoint, let's see what we find here. And we can look at those first poll results. What do you have? I can't read them. Let's see. Okay. It looks like we've got some no's and some let me think about it. So that's good. Okay, and as I say, if you find this intriguing or you think of a project where you might need some kind of analysis of economic impact, energy impacts, environmental impacts, other types of impacts, the Bureau has the ability to do that, and we would be glad to talk to you about that. Our next webinar is going to be April 10th and talk about the Nebraska Thriving Index. And that's all I have for this morning. So thank you for attending our webinar.